and today's topic is networking. So I'm going to give you a brief overview. I know I've covered some in my other videos and things, but I wanted to just give you an overview of some of the general terms. This first segment will be on the physical networking section, and then I'm going to follow it up with the logical stuff and how to plan out a network accordingly to what your needs are. So I'm going to start with basically how you get your drop. So you're going to have internet coming into pretty much any environment. Even if it's not internet, it's going to be a tunnel to maybe one of your other remote offices or to a head corporation or something along those lines. Most often though, it's internet in and everything else is worked around that. That's the most common case scenario. The tunnels are then built inside of that to the other internet sites. So, but there's fiber, there's DSL, there's cable, and those are kind of the main ways right now. Most businesses are running on fiber, but in some areas and in some remote sites, especially in mining industry, but also some logging camps and man camps and things like that, you don't have access to getting fiber in. It's just not a reality. So what you need is a telecommunications uplink via Wi-Fi that is usually on top of a large tower. And that's where this comes in here. Now this particular one is of a client site, but it's a large shielded dome protected from any interference. This particular one, I believe, gives a 29 dB signal. I'd have to look it up, I don't know for sure. But it actually has been pulled and upgraded to some more modern equipment, but it works with one of the bullets, just like what I had configured for my smaller site-to-site links. That goes on there, the other end, the same setup. They're tagged together, you get a signal rating, you tweak it, you now have a point-to-point network connection. So that's where these larger ones come in. And you'll see them all over on communications towers if you drive across any countryside or any remote site or anything like that. So the next is these smaller versions of the same thing. Again, they just connect with a rocket, or a bullet, sorry, connect with a bullet. Now, again, one on each side forming a bridge that gets you your link between sites. Now, nowadays there's a lot more all-in-one units. They don't rely on a separate antenna for these smaller point-to-points. A lot of the times you can get those in a 90-degree or 180-degree segment broadcast unit, or just an omnidirectional, generally a large pole, and or the directional for your point-to-points. The other units are mainly used for multicast, where say you've got one building here, and then maybe you've got one building here, one building here. Well, you need to put in a 90-degree, and this can connect back, and this can connect back to one centralized unit. So that's often the case that you have those, especially things like man camps or multi-site industrial buildings. So you can have a point on all the satellite buildings coming back to the central building to connect in one or two, because you might have to have a couple of 180 degrees depending on your layout of your work site. So that's that. Then from that point you come into a firewall or a router or a connection point that has your external coming in and your internal going out. Now in homes, those are represented by these. This is basically a home D-Link Wi-Fi router. So basically the internet comes in to the one port, then you've got 4 ports where you can feed from, and you've got your, in this case, this was back in the early days where you had, early days of 5 gig, so you had the 2.4 gig and the 5 gig. So they were separate. Little different configuration now. This unit's a few years old, but it lets me show my point that you've got one coming in, multiple coming out. It's the same thing in the business environment, except you don't build the Wi-Fi in. In the business/enterprise environment, this is actually the unit that I use here. We do use larger ones at work, and this is called the Unified Security Gateway, and it is basically your firewall and router unit. So the internet comes in, this endpoint port, it's a console port, it's for going in and managing the equipment. but basically you have your wide area network comes into this port. This port over here is another wide area network, and number 2, it can be used in a number of different ways, but mainly it's if you want to bridge internet connections, double up the speed. It's off by default. And then this line goes out into your switch, and this box handles your firewall rules, it handles your VLANs, it handles any special routing or port forwarding you have set up, which I'll be showing some of that later, or at least talking about it later, and primarily delivers to your switches. Now, for the UniFi VLANs to work, you need UniFi switches so that they handle it in sequence and they all work well together and they're just designed to work together. So I was going to do some VLANing, but I don't have a UniFi switch, which brings us to the next. So the next port is a switch. One's sitting up here. This is the brand that I'm currently using, Dell Power Connects. This is a 6248. It handles something called layer 3 switching, which is essentially routing. It's a form of routing to make it simple. But so it's got, this particular one has 48 ports, plus it has 4 SPDIF ports. So what these do is they allow you to put a GBIX or a SPDIF in, which connects to fiber or to gigabit, Ethernet, or whatever. There's multi-forms of connections there. This is also a gigabit switch, and I'm not using it because I am not going to need 48 ports in my environment. I only need 24. So I have the next model down, which is in my rack. Some of my other videos show it, but it's essentially the same thing, but it only has layer 2 switching, not layer 3. I don't need layer 3 because all my layer 3s, all my routing is handled in my USG. So I don't really need to worry about that in this environment that I'm building. If I was building a more complex environment and I was using an environment where I had a lot of layer 3 VLANing and programming and routing tables, I would be using this, but I'm not. So the other product I have here to show you is, this is a Cisco Catalyst 2960, I believe. 2960. So this is a typical Cisco switch used in enterprise environment. Very large percentage of people in the enterprise universe use Cisco switches. It is a preference, it has been the mainstay, it has been the go-to. Some people use Dells, some people use HPs. More and more now, people are starting to use the Ubiquity products. They just make amazing products. Everything works down, and it basically just makes managing a network side of things very, very easy. You don't need to be a CCNA or a CCND. You can design everything through a GUI, through easy controls, and the UniFi support people are amazing. The other big thing, the reason why I don't use Cisco, even though I'm a Cisco guy, I've been a Cisco guy for years and years, my Dell Power Connect, I have no licensing attached to them. There probably is licensing available for them for support or whatever you want to call it, but I do not have it. But with the Cisco equipment, to the best of my knowledge, if you're running any Cisco gear, you need licensing attached to it. And the licensing is not a cheap thing. So you can't run it unlicensed, but then there's certain, I'm not going to get into it, but there's things about that people don't want to do. So a big cost in an enterprise network isn't necessarily the startup for the equipment, but is the ongoing year after year after year support fees and licensing fees you have to pay for the equipment. And in my opinion, that is a flawed business model. You're already paying a large amount of money. I think it's about $2,000 when you buy them brand new. So you're already paying a large amount of money. If you've got 30 or 40 of these in an environment, plus a core router that's going to set you back another $30,000 plus, depending on the model you purchase, you have a huge startup cost, and it's a big expense. And now you've got that ongoing licensing for every single unit year after year. Say it's only $100. I don't know what it is. I've never had to pay it. It's always been handled by other people up the food chain. But you got 50 units at $100 a piece, you know, that's a lot of money. And then you got court routers, which are probably a lot more. I mean, it's not cheap. So anyway, that's that. So then you come out of the switch, you go into a patch panel. Now this is just an empty patch panel because it's from my amp products, or this one's Levington actually. But a lot of them come pre-configured with those keystone jacks in them. So you plug your network cable in, and the back end of that with the keystone jack and the wire goes through the walls to an endpoint. And that's how you, at your desk, at your office space or whatever, you connect in there, they come to a patch panel, then the patch panel goes into the switch. Then the switch goes out into other equipment or other ports and everything interconnects that way. So that's basically the physical aspect of networking. And yeah, I think the next level, the next video, pardon the gibberish, I'm still pretty new at this whole YouTube thing. I'm trying to work on it. But the next one is going to be on kind of designing your layout, how to scale for your equipment, how to pre-plan for it, and just some real basics. So that one will be probably a webcam and a screen capture. So I hope to see you in the next one. Thank you.